What's up, fish tank people? FishtankTV.com. Dustin's Fish Tanks bringing it to you with my man Brian, doing actually a fish tank TV. You guys have seen him at his house. Brian, say what's up, man.
What's up, everybody?
Yeah, so Brian, you've done how many of these?
This will be number 8.
This will be number 8. Wow. So anytime Brian sees a TV on the side of the road, he runs out and grabs it. This is actually one we found that the hood, the top of it's kind of so-so, but the other one we saw was better, but it was gone when you found it. Is that right? So we were, but whatever. This one will work. So what we're going to show you in this first step here is we're going to show you what you need to start with this, Brian. So walk us through this here. What are the tools that you need? First, take us through each one and what you need, why.
All right. The most important thing is you want a 1/4 inch hex wrench.
Socket, whatever.
Socket, yeah, whatever you want to call it. I don't use the socket. I use a flathead screwdriver, put it inside, that way I can get good action with it. But most of the time when you have an screwdriver with interchangeable heads, the end is actually a 1/4 inch. So you can use this the same way as you use this. So if you don't have this and you happen to have a screwdriver that has the interchangeable heads to it, you can pull the head out and it should be about a 1/4 inch. So usually that works just fine.
Okay.
I use a small hammer. If you have one with a straight head, that works really well sometimes when you're prying up the lid. You're also going to need a putty knife or a paint scraper with a metal tip on it. Get one that has a little bit of wiggle room to it as well, because when you're using the hammer, you can hammer it in, and then you'll use this and literally work it across the wood to get the glue free. This is a hole starter. I use this sometimes if there's a really hard spot to get at. Pound that in a little bit, and then I can actually get the hammer and the putty knife in to get the leverage. And then you also need a pair of wire cutters. These are a necessity because there's so many wires in the back of these TVs.
And those are actually just needle nose pliers you're using the cutter.
Yeah, I'm using just the wire cutter part. But yeah, those are needle nose pliers. If you have a pair of just wire cutters, that's just the same. Then you're also going to need hinges to put the lid on the top.
And then in a later part of this, we're going to show you the actual like fish tank parts of it. But for now, this is what you need to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the back part. So Brian's going around, and like you've done, this is your 8th one, so I mean, he said that every single one of these has about the exact same thing when it comes to the size of the bolts coming out the back, so shouldn't be a big deal there.
They all on the sides, all these things, they might even have screws holding this back in. It might just be these 2 little plastic things. You just turn them flat so that it pops right off. Lean it forward, and it should just pop right out. Usually you'll have some sort of cable input. You just lift that up and just let that dangle.
There we go.
And this is the back of your television. Everything inside of here, basically, we're going to remove. You want to save the front panels that your buttons are on. If you don't save those, you're going to have holes in the front of your TV, which you don't want. But we'll get to that here in a minute.
So here we go.
We're going to start gutting everything out of it now.
Here we go. Alright, so we've taken the back off the TV, and Brian has gone ahead and disassembled most of this. And our goal is just basically to gut the television at this point. The first thing we did though, Brian, show the bottom, the circuit board or whatever. There's
generally 2 screws. They're very easy to find. They're in the bottom corners of the tray at the bottom. The tray actually just slides right out. The TV does not fall out that easily.
Yeah.
Around the TV, once you have the slides out, usually you have these wires that hold it in place. At each corner you have a bracket that looks very similar to this. And usually there's 3 screws in each part, 1 in the middle and then 2 in the top.
Right in through there.
Yes. Again, I would recommend removing them out of the bottom first so the weight is at the top, as opposed to removing it from the bottom or the top first. That way the TV doesn't actually break the hinges at the bottom and end up cracking the plastic.
So we undo the bottom of them, the bottom 2 first, then the top 2, and we hold it at the top. Now what are our caution points here, Brian?
Alright. On the tray at the bottom, just pull it out and throw it away. You do have a capacitor here. Don't mess with the capacitor. It's full of bottled up energy, and if you play with it too much, you can make it explode. Not something cool to do at all.
Also, you'll note that the timestamp on this, 7/17/1960. So, you know, that's the era we're looking for. So we slid that out. We're throwing that away. There's no need for anything on there.
Trash.
This is also trash. Now, we've undone our what, dozen bolts on this.
Exactly. The back of the TV, I'm going to lean it down now. I've already pulled it out. It falls out very easily once you have your bolts removed. But the back of the TV is actually just like a gigantic light bulb. If you break this off, all the gas inside the TV is going to come spewing out. You don't want to have that happen. If it does happen, just get out of the room, open the window, let it air out. Don't go in there for an hour or 2. I don't think it would, it's not going to harm you.
Don't mess with it.
Yeah, just don't mess with it. But Just be very careful to not bend or break this piece off the end, because it is basically just the cap to a bunch of pressure inside the TV.
Okay, and then something just to show for fun, this is how you change the colors on the TV?
Yeah, you can change the pixels and everything with the little knobs, or this is how they would adjust them back in the day. Usually there's paint showing where they should be for best from the factory, but
that's
people
hilarious.
could play with that a little bit.
Yeah, for LCDs. So the other part here is we want to talk about, I'm going to go around to the front to show this, but go ahead and talk about it, Brian. The panel part here.
The buttons here are actually part of the inside here. So you don't want to throw that away. You want to make sure that you keep that panel. I stripped all the wires out and just left this. This is actually one piece that came out. I screwed it back on so that I had the buttons in the front still. We'll tighten it up just a little bit. But if you remove this piece and throw it away, you're going to have holes where the buttons were, and then you'll be able to see your fish tank from the front through little small holes. If that's what you want, by all means, that's cool. But if you want it to look original, I would recommend leaving this panel on.
And then also a piece of caution with this panel, you're talking about the dials and just the way that panel might come sticking back out. Parts of it, you said the dials in the lower part?
Yeah, the dials in the lower part down here, I went ahead and just left them in. This TV doesn't have them sticking out nearly as far. Some TVs have really long dials to get back to the electronics in it, but this one doesn't have that. Up here, there's actually 2 screws, some really sharp points. I'm going to remove that in a moment.
All right, here we go. All right, so we are on to the hardest part of this with Brian here, and the hardest part is what, Brian? Getting the lid off typically?
Getting the lid off in one piece without damaging the rest of the console. I mean, anybody can just rip the lid off of a TV, but you're going to crack all the plastic in the front. If you have a cracked plastic front, what's the point of having the TV tank in the first place?
So this is our critical part here, this mission critical part.
We want to get this single piece of wood that is the lid off.
All right.
I've already gone around with the paint scraper, hammer, and the hammer. And I literally start at the edges, and I hammered in until I had the entire seam undone. On most every TV, you have this support beam going all the way across. It has 3 screws in it. Again, they use the 1/4-inch hex and just unscrew them out of there. Sometimes you get the little triangles in the corner that are extra supports. Those are usually a Phillips head screwdriver, so you want to make sure you get all the screws that go upward there. But generally, most of the TVs have screws in the front, going into this top lid part that hold the 2 pieces of wood together in the front. That's the only hard part about this entire TV, and that's where you actually have to spend a little bit more time than you want to sometimes. But to get to those screws that are inside the lid, we're going to have to actually remove this entire black frame that is the TV. We're going to have a wooden box with 4 sides and nothing else. And then once we get those 3 screws removed, then we'll put the plastic insert back in that makes it the TV.
Now, one of the things we lucked out on, though, is that this was only put together with screws. You said you've had some of these top ones, like, not every TV is the same, so.
Exactly. Some of the really expensive high-end TVs, especially I found RCA TVs, my 78 RCA that I've got at the house, the top was dovetailed together with really high-end wood, so I actually had to go through with a saw and saw through a couple spots at the back side of the TV to try and get that lid off. And I was successful, but it just took a lot of time and effort.
So off with the black piece in the middle here.
Yep,
right in
now
the
we're
center.
going to remove the black piece. There's usually 12 to 14 screws holding it in place.
There we go.
It's got to go off.
All right, so we've got 80% of the top part off, but the most important part is obviously the front part, because we want to keep that TV look. So we've got the back plastic piece we showed you, and this is how it comes apart. Brian's undone. How many bolts you think?
20.
20 bolts, and then go ahead and show everyone.
First, you need to remove the buttons, set them to the side. This is the piece that I told you, you can see from the back what it looks like. Without the buttons, if you remove this panel and throw it away, you won't have the button look from the front. So you want to save that intact as is. We'll put that back on in a moment. We've already gone ahead and unscrewed all the screws around the black plastic shell here. This is what makes your TV a TV. So we're actually, once all the screws are removed, we're just going to remove it out of the TV. Just set it down up here for just a moment. But in the front, a wooden bar going across. To remove the top, we usually have anywhere between 3 and 5 Phillips head screws. Those are what you have to remove in order to get the entire top piece to come off. Without that, you're not going to succeed. But once that's removed, then we actually go ahead and put the TV back together, and the top part can come off any point after you've removed those screws. Oh, it's a lovely noise.
And then we've also got the top part off here to
Yep,
show.
the top part you can completely lift up now.
Top part can be completely lifted up. On this one right here, we had these little dowels in these parts right here. One there, one there, one there, and one there, and those ones were kind of tough to pull out, but then it just comes from there. So now we have the lid basically removed, and we are at basically full demolition. We have to build a stand to put it on, but
we have to screw the lid or the plastic shell back in, obviously, now. And that's it. We'll put some brackets on the back so that it opens and closes, and we're ready to start building supports for it.